Today I'm going to work into my sketch a little bit, just to see what happens. I'm starting off with some Liquitex acrylic gouache, and I'll just see how I get on with that to start with, and I might add some other media in as I go. So I've got a sort of a yellowy ochre and a red, and more of a lemony yellow. So I'll start with those and just see how I get on with the oranges and lemons. When I'm painting this, I'm starting off with this very, very flexible flat brush, but I become quite frustrated with it, and you'll see that I change brushes a couple of times just because I'm just not getting on with a couple of the brushes that I start with. So now I've changed to a slightly wider flat brush. We'll just see how I get on with that. Some of my brushes are so old and they're split, and they're quite good for some things. This one I can see, you can see how it's sort of making these very strange linear marks when I'm wanting a full block of colour. So I've changed brushes once again, and I've ended up with another flat brush, but this one is better, and I'm more able to paint the blocks of colour that I want without the bristles all breaking up into little lines. Just thinking about where to go next and what my next move will be. And I've decided to get out some blue acrylic gouache, which blue obviously is the complementary colour to the orange, and I'll put that on, maybe sort of looking for some shadows. I don't have the bowl of fruit in front of me anymore because I ate it. It's been a couple of days since I did the original sketch. So I'm now sort of working from my imagination and trying to imagine where some shadows might be, where some lights might be, and just putting those in. And it was a crystal bowl, a cut crystal bowl that the fruit was in. So I'm trying to put in some of the indications of the cut crystal, and the blue and white Cornish ware jug that I had. Now I'm etching into the paint, but I don't think the lines are showing very much at that stage. The paint was a bit too thin. Trying to indicate that diamond, the cut diamond of the crystal bowl. And to put in some of the shadows between the fruits. I'm imagining that the light is coming from the top right hand corner, so we'll get a bit of a shadow just inside the jug, and a bit of shadow on the handle there as well. Putting some shadow just to ground that jug on the tablecloth. So now I'm just adding some yellow to the lemons to try and just bring those out a little bit more. They've kind of got lost amongst the oranges, I think. and painting over the shadows. It just knocks the shadow back a little bit. And just indicating that this fruit can be seen through the glass of the crystal as well. So going beneath the fruit. And here I'm continuing to layer up colours on the fruit. Paintings always look richer if you can add more and more layers. It just adds a complexity and a nice richness to the surface. Although I'm just painting on sketchbook paper, so I can't build up too much. It's not like painting on canvas. And here I'm getting out some Liquitex acrylic ink, and I'm going to start putting in the pattern on the tablecloth. It was a black and white sort of checked linear tablecloth with a fringe, and you can just see a little bit at the top of this video. So just using the dropper top to indicate some of the pattern and some of the lines on this piece of fabric. Trying to keep it quite loose. I'm now changing to a small flat brush, and it's actually an angled flat brush, and it just allows me to spread some of that ink out a little bit more and make the lines a bit thicker, so that I can have a variety of lines, from thick lines and thin lines. And I'm going back into where I made that dropper pattern so that I can define the checks a little bit more using this brush and just using the ink that I had applied with the dropper. So I'm continuing to make lines, and I'm getting less and less paint on my brush, which means that I can get a variation in the tone. So I've got some very dark blacks, and I've got some that are almost grey, because I'm using pretty much a dry brush by this stage. It's always good to have a bit of variety. Just adds interest and texture to your piece. In this next section, I'm continuing just to build up the pattern on the tablecloth, trying to keep some variety of line widths and also some variety in the depth and strength of the black that I'm using. So I'm just going to speed this part of the video up, and you'll just watch me build up the tablecloth. Now I'm looking at the composition and thinking that everything is just floating on the page. So I want to ground the whole composition by putting in perhaps a table underneath the cloth. So I'm using that sort of that yellow ochre colour of the Liquitex acrylic gouache to create a tabletop. And it's picking up some of the grey or some of the black acrylic ink which hasn't dried properly, but that's okay, I don't mind that. And I've decided to put a dark background in, just using the black acrylic ink. And some of it will be quite black and some of it will be more patchy grey. It's just to give basically a context to the whole composition, so it's not just floating around in space. So now I've got a foreground of the table and the dark background behind the objects. The painting is basically finished, and what I'm going to do now is just have a look and make any refinements that I think, just little final adjustments and tweaks that might help bring the painting together. Defining some lines, adding some variety in the quality of the lines. After taking some time to look at the painting, I've decided that it needs some more layers, and I'm just going to see what happens if I add some different media over the top. So these are Gelatos, which are sort of a gel crayon for kids, and you can see already that just adding that bit of yellow has brightened up those lemons a little bit. And now I'm going to go and see what happens if I add the orange. That's the great thing about sketchbooks. You can just play and experiment with your materials and just see what happens with no pressure. Now the white is more like a gouache stick, and I've never really used it before, so I'm just, again, what happens if? This is an Inktense pencil that I'm just using to define the edges of the fruit a little bit. And now going over again with a neo colour crayon, which is what I started the whole drawing with in the first place. Looking for highlights. Again, doing some drawing with, this time it's a chunky woody crayon, defining that jug, defining the handle, trying again to keep it loose, to not lose the freshness of the drawing. Here I'm mixing up some black acrylic ink with the other colours on my palette to try and make a shadow colour. I want to take some of the whiteness away from the jug, so that's a very, very pale grey that I'm adding. And to put a shadow, because as I said, the light would be coming from the top right hand corner in this picture, so it would need a shadow on the opposite side, and gradually grading out that shadow so it's not such a distinct line. So here I've got this white gouache stick, just trying to add a few highlights, brighten a few spots where the light might be falling. I've decided that some white acrylic paint might work a little bit better to create a little bit of the illusion of light catching certain parts of the painting. Trying to bring out some of that diamond pattern on the crystal vase, the crystal bowl. This is all done from memory, but I think when you've sketched something from life, it is in your memory a lot better for you to draw upon if you then need to draw from your imagination. So the more you can draw from life, the better you're going to be at drawing from imagination. So I think I've played around enough with that, and I think it's time just to let it be and leave it at that.